My boss said if you refuse to train her, you're fired. I walked out, sued for retaliation, exposed their blacklist, and watched their whole company collapse. I'm Andy, 27, male, and I spent 5 years at this logistics company thinking hard work and loyalty meant something. Turns out I was just the office-packed mule with a college degree. I started right after graduation in an entry-level analyst position. The pay was decent enough to afford rent and upgrade from instant ramen. The plan was simple: keep my head down, do good work, climb the ladder, standard American dream stuff. Reality check: I became the guy everyone dumped their problems on because I was dumb enough to fix them. Client having a meltdown at 9:00 p.m.? Call me. Project imploding 2 days before the deadline? I'll pull an all-nighter. Someone needs vacation coverage? Guess who's working through the weekend? I did all of it thinking loyalty was a two-way street. Yeah, it's not. The worst part was how normalized it became. Anna from accounts would forward me spreadsheets at 7 p.m. with urgent in the subject line. Nothing was ever actually urgent, she just knew I'd handle it before morning. Ronnie from operations treated me like his personal assistant. He'd swing by my desk 3 times a day asking me to fix things he should have learned years ago. Never a please, never a thank you. Just expectation. And I kept doing it, kept saying yes, kept thinking this was what team players did, that eventually someone would notice, that the extra effort would translate into something tangible. It didn't. My manager, Steve, was always feeding me this line about how valuable I was, how the whole department would collapse without me. You're absolutely critical to our operations. Translation: we're never promoting you because you're too useful right where you are. The senior operations manager position opened up in March. Basically my current job, but with actual authority, real decision-making power, and a salary that wouldn't make me wince every time I checked my bank account. Steve pulled me aside the day the posting went live, gave me this whole speech about how I should absolutely apply, how I was exactly what they were looking for, how this was my time. He even helped me prep my application. We did mock interviews. He coached me on what the executives wanted to hear. I spent 2 weeks perfecting that application, went through 3 rounds of interviews with different directors, and the VP answered every question like I'd rehearsed it in my sleep. Every interview felt solid. After the final one, the VP actually shook my hand and said, "I think you know how this is going to go." Then he smiled like we were in on some inside joke. I walked out of that building thinking I'd finally made it. Then they hired Bella. Bella had been there 14 months. I know the exact time frame because I personally trained her. I sat with her for 2 full weeks, showing her our systems, explaining client relationships that took me years to build, walking her through processes I created from scratch. Nice enough person, showed up on time, did her assignments, smiled a lot, but exceptional? Not even close. She was aggressively average. The kind of employee who completes tasks and immediately asks what's next, like she's waiting for permission to think. Somehow that was enough to steal my promotion. Steve called me into his office on a Friday afternoon. I should have known from his face. That forced, sympathetic expression people make when they're about to ruin your day. "Listen," he started, leaning back in his chair, doing his best concerned manager impression. "Wanted to tell you personally before the announcement we've decided to go with Bella for the senior operations manager role." I just stared, waiting for the punchline, waiting for him to say they were creating a second position, anything that made sense. Got nothing. "I know this isn't what you wanted to hear," he continued, "but the decision came down to leadership experience. Bella's previous role involved more direct team management, and the executives felt that gave her an advantage. So the woman who came to my desk 3 times a week, asking how to handle basic client emails, had more leadership experience than me." Sure, made perfect sense. I wanted to flip his desk, wanted to walk out right then. Instead, I just nodded and asked if that was everything. Steve looked genuinely relieved I wasn't making a scene. Told me I was handling it really professionally, said there would be other opportunities down the road. I went back to my desk and sat there for an hour staring at nothing, just processing the fact that I'd been passed over for someone I personally trained, someone who still needed my help. That weekend, I updated my resume, started browsing job boards, quietly putting options together. If this company didn't value me, someone else would. Monday morning, I showed up ready to do exactly my job and nothing extra. No more late nights, no more covering for people, no more being the department's emergency contact. I had a whole plan. Keep my head down, collect paychecks, interview during lunch breaks, leave when something better came through, clean exit. Then the next morning, Steve asked me to train Bella for her new role. And that's when I decided to burn it all down. Tuesday morning, Steve materialized at my desk before I'd even logged in. That should have been my first red flag. He never showed up before 9 unless something was about to become my problem. "Got a minute?" he asked, already walking toward the conference room. I followed him in. He shut the door, sat down, and did this thing where he clasped his hands on the table. "So, Bella starts her new role Monday, and we need to get her up to speed quickly. You know the operations better than anyone, and Andy, you're the obvious choice to help her transition." I blinked. Let those words really sink in. "You want me to train Bella?" I said slowly, not asking, confirming I'd heard this correctly. "Exactly. Just for a few weeks. Show her the advanced stuff. Introduce her to the key clients. Walk her through the reporting systems. All the things you already do. All the things I already do. The job I apparently wasn't qualified for but was qualified to teach." "No," I said. Steve's face went through confusion, then concern, then something that looked like he'd bitten into a lemon. "Excuse me? No, I'm not training Bella." He actually laughed, like I told a joke. "Come on, don't be like that. I know you're disappointed, but we're still a team here. We all need to support each other." "If I wasn't qualified to do the job," I said, "then I'm definitely not qualified to train someone else to do it." The fake smile vanished. "That's not how this works. Supporting team development is part of your responsibilities. You're expected to share institutional knowledge." "Share institutional knowledge," I repeated, "with the person who got promoted over me, the person I already trained once. That person." Steve leaned forward, switching to his fake concerned voice. "Look, I understand you're upset, but refusing to help is only going to damage your future prospects here. This is how you demonstrate leadership, by being professional when things don't go your way." I almost laughed. "You mean the future where I work myself to death for another 5 years and watch you promote someone else? That future? This attitude right here?" he said, his tone sharpening. "This is exactly why the executive team had reservations about your management readiness." There it was. Not leadership experience, attitude. Translation: I didn't kiss enough rings or play enough politics. I stood up. I do my job, I meet my deadlines, I handle my clients, but I'm not training someone for a position I was rejected for. Find someone else. I walked out before he could respond. Back at my desk, I opened my laptop and started working like nothing had happened. An hour later, calendar invite. Subject line: discussion regarding team collaboration. Attendees: me, Steve, and Brenda from HR. Here we go. The meeting was set for that afternoon. I spent the morning doing actual work while coworkers shot me looks. Office gossip moves fast. At 2 p.m., I walked into the HR office. Brenda was already there next to Steve, both wearing matching expressions of disappointment. My coworker Todd was lingering near the coffee machine, trying to look casual while obviously eavesdropping. Now, let me tell you about this guy. Todd was the kind of guy who'd microwave fish in the office kitchen and genuinely not understand why people were mad. Good guy. Brain like a goldfish. "Thanks for joining us," Brenda said, like I'd had a choice. Steve mentioned there's been some resistance regarding the transition plan. I told Steve I'm not training Bella, I said. "That's not resistance. That's a decision." Brenda glanced at Steve, then back at me. "I understand the promotion decision was disappointing, but refusing to support a colleague isn't acceptable workplace behavior. Is it acceptable workplace behavior to string someone along for 5 years and then promote someone they trained?" Steve shifted in his seat. "Nobody strung you along. You applied. Someone else was selected. That's business. And it's business that I don't have to go above and beyond anymore." Brenda pulled out a printed document, probably had my name on it in bold. "Your job description includes knowledge transfer and team development support. Refusing direct training assignments could constitute insubordination." Insubordination? They were really going there. "Then write me up," I said. "But I'm still not doing it." The room went quiet. Steve looked like he'd swallowed a wasp. Brenda's jaw tightened. "We're trying to find a constructive path forward," she said carefully. "But continued refusal to follow management directives will result in corrective action." "Do what you need to do," I said. "I'm doing my job, just not someone else's." I left that meeting knowing I'd painted a target on my back. I didn't care. I was done being the guy who bent over backward for people who saw him as disposable. The rest of the week was tense. Steve stopped talking to me unless absolutely necessary. Other CO workers started avoiding me like I had the plague, and Bella kept trying to ask me questions. Sorry, I'd say every time, "You should ask Steve. He's your manager now." She'd look confused, sometimes hurt. But I held firm. Not my job, not my problem. Steve wanted to promote her without my input. He could train her without it too. The shift in office dynamics was immediate and obvious. Ronnie from operations actually had to figure out his own problems. He started making mistakes, got called out by clients. Suddenly I wasn't the guy everyone leaned on, and the whole support structure collapsed like a house of cards. Anna stopped forwarding me urgent requests, started sending them to Bella instead. Bella would panic, come to my desk, and I'd redirect her to Steve. I watched her confidence crumble in real time. She'd signed up for a promotion, not a battlefield. Todd cornered me by the printer Thursday afternoon. "Dude, what's going on? Everyone's saying you refuse to train Bella." "That's right," I said. His face scrunched up in confusion. "But why though? Isn't that kind of mean?" "Todd, they promoted her over me and then asked me to train her. How is that not ridiculous?" He thought about this for a solid 10 seconds. "Oh yeah, that does seem weird." Then after another pause, "But couldn't you just train her anyway? To be nice?" This is why I liked Todd. His brain moved at the speed of dial-up internet, but his heart was in the right place. "Being nice is how I ended up in this situation," I said. "I'm done being nice." By Friday, things were falling apart. Bella had missed 2 client deadlines, sent the wrong quarterly report to a major account, completely blanked during a presentation to executives. I watched it happen from my desk while doing my own work. Not my circus, not my monkeys. Steve tried cornering me in the break room. "You know she's struggling." "Not my problem," I replied, pouring coffee. "It's everyone's problem when projects fail. Then maybe you should have promoted someone who didn't need constant supervision." His face went red. "You're being petty." "I'm being professional. I do my job. That's it." That night, I got a call from a recruiter. Better company, better pay, actual growth opportunities. I scheduled an interview for the following week. Monday morning, another calendar invite. Subject, performance discussion. They were going to fire me or put me on a performance improvement plan. Either way, I knew where this was headed. I walked into that meeting with zero expectations and even less concern. They wanted panic, wanted me to beg. I was already halfway out the door, and honestly, I couldn't wait to see their faces when I quit. The conference room felt smaller with 4 people in it. Steve and Brenda looked uncomfortable. Colleen from senior HR looked like she'd rather be literally anywhere else. They had folders, printed papers, the whole firing squad set up. Todd walked past the conference room window and gave me a thumbs up for some reason. Probably thought it was a good meeting. "Like I said, great guy." Colleen started. "We're here to discuss ongoing performance concerns and your recent refusal to participate in required team activities." Performance concerns. I'd had perfect reviews for 5 years straight, but sure, suddenly I had concerns. "What concerns?" I asked. Colleen opened her folder, started shuffling papers like she was dealing cards. "We've documented several instances of uncooperative behavior, failure to complete assigned tasks, and attitude issues impacting team morale." "Assigned tasks," I repeated. "You mean training Bella?" "Among other things." Steve jumped in. "You've been withdrawn from team activities. You've declined to assist with collaborative projects. Multiple colleagues have reported your negative energy." Nice. We were doing corporate astrology now. "The colleagues who used to dump their work on me are upset. I stopped doing it for free," I said. "Shocking." Brenda cut in. "This isn't about extra work. This is about being a team player and supporting company objectives." "What are my job objectives?" "Because last I checked, I wasn't promoted to management. So my objective is doing my actual job, which I've done perfectly with 0 errors." Colleen looked down at her papers, flipped through them. She was hunting for something concrete. She wasn't going to find it because it didn't exist. "We're placing you on a 60-day performance improvement plan," she finally said. "You'll need to demonstrate measurable improvement in collaboration and responsiveness to management direction." A PIP, the corporate death sentence. Basically a paper trail so they could fire you and claim it was justified. That's when I reached into my bag, pulled out an envelope, and slid it across the table. "What's that?" Steve asked. "My resignation." "You should have seen their faces." Colleen's mouth dropped open. Steve looked like I'd slapped him with a fish. Brenda just stared at the envelope like it might explode. "You can't resign immediately," Steve said. "You need to give 2 weeks' notice. Actually, employment is at will. I can leave whenever I want. Same way you can fire me whenever you want." Colleen recovered first. "Without proper notice, you'll be marked as ineligible for rehire. You'll need references." Don't need anything from this company, I said. I've already got another job lined up. Slight exaggeration, had an interview, not an offer. But they didn't need to know that. I stood up, picked up the resignation letter, walked it to Colleen's side of the table, and placed it directly in front of her. I'm done. Email my final paperwork. Steve stood too. You can't just leave, you have active projects. We need transition time. Should have thought about that before the PIP. All my work is documented in the shared drives. You'll figure it out. Your management. This is completely unprofessional, Steve said, voice rising. No, I said. This is self-preservation. I walked out, went to my desk, packed my stuff. Personal photos, coffee mug, the good stapler I'd brought from home. It took maybe 10 minutes. The office had gone completely silent. Everyone pretending to work while watching me pack. Anna looked mortified. Ronnie actually had the nerve to look sympathetic. Bella was nowhere to be seen, probably hiding in a conference room somewhere. Todd appeared next to me. Whoa, are you leaving? Yep. Like, right now? Right now. His face went through several emotions before settling on confused respect. That's actually kind of cool. Like in the movies. Todd, only do that if you have another job first, buddy. Oh, right. That makes sense. He helped me carry a box to my car. I logged out of my computer, dropped my badge and building access on Steve's desk. It wasn't there, probably still in the conference room having a breakdown, and walked out at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday. I got to my car, sat in the driver's seat, took a deep breath. My phone was already buzzing. Text from another coworker, OMG, did you just quit? I replied, yep. Her, everyone is freaking out. Me, good. I started the engine, drove home, and for the first time in 5 years, I didn't think about work at all. The chaos that followed was beautiful. Anna kept me updated. Bella was drowning. Projects were missing deadlines. Clients were calling demanding to know where their reports were. The filing system I'd built was apparently impossible for anyone else to understand. Turns out all those processes I documented weren't as self-explanatory as I thought because nobody had bothered to read them. They just asked me instead. Now they were lost. The weekly client reports I'd automated? Nobody knew how to run them. The vendor relationships I'd maintained were falling apart because nobody had contact information or negotiation history. One major client threatened to pull their contract after Bella sent them data for the wrong quarter. Another demanded a meeting with executives after their shipment tracking went completely dark for 3 days. Ronnie managed to delete an entire database backup trying to figure out something I'd handled in my sleep. Steve tried calling me twice. Left voicemails asking if I'd reconsider, if we could work something out, if I'd at least do a quick transition meeting, deleted them without listening. Then came the email from Colleen saying I needed to come in for an exit interview. I replied, all company property has been returned. Send any required documents for electronic signature. 2 weeks later, Anna texted, Bella quit. I paused, then called her immediately. Wait, what? Couldn't handle it. She was working until like midnight every day and still falling behind. Clients were complaining. Steve was on her constantly. She just walked out yesterday, didn't even give notice. I laughed. So now they have nobody. Nobody. And Steve is losing his mind. They're trying to split your old work between 3 people, and none of them have a clue what they're doing. Good, I said. Let it burn. Over the next month, the updates kept coming. The department was hemorrhaging clients, people were quitting, projects were failing, upper management was demanding answers. Meanwhile, I'd moved on, found a better job with a company that actually appreciated competence. But watching my old workplace implode from a distance, that was just the appetizer. The main course was still coming. 3 days after quitting, I was home around 10 a.m., relaxing for once, when my phone rang. Mom, I sent it to voicemail, but I figured she'd just keep calling, so I answered. What is wrong with you? She said before I could even say hello. No greeting, just immediate attack mode. Good morning to you too. Don't get smart with me. Your brother told me you quit your job. Is that true? My brother, of course. Zach, the golden child. Zach was 3 years older, always been the favorite. Dad's pride, mom's angel, could do no wrong. Graduated college with a finance degree our parents paid for while I worked part-time to cover my own expenses. Got handed an entry position at Dad's friend's company while I sent out 200 applications. Every success in his life had an asterisk, but nobody wanted to acknowledge it. Growing up, every achievement of mine got compared to his. Made honor roll? Zach had made Dean's List. Got a scholarship? Zach hadn't needed one because he was already set. Bought my first car with money I'd saved. Zach got a newer one as a graduation gift. The pattern never ended. Yeah, it's true, I said. Why would you do something so stupid? Her voice was rising. Do you know how hard jobs are to find? You can't just throw away 5 years because you didn't get what you wanted. They passed me over and then asked me to train my replacement. That's not about not getting what I wanted. That's about basic respect. That's life, she shot back. Things don't always go your way. You deal with it. You don't just quit. I could hear Dad in the background saying something, then he was on the phone. Listen, Dad said in that fake calm voice he uses when he's actually furious. Your mother and I didn't raise a quitter. Quitter. Rich coming from the guy who'd worked the same government job for 35 years, who thought loyalty to a company was somehow a virtue instead of a trap. I'm not a quitter. I left a toxic situation. You left without another job. That's irresponsible. I have interviews lined up. You need to call them back, Mom cut in. Apologize. See if you can get your position back. I actually laughed at that. You're joking. They tried to put me on a performance improvement plan. Why would I go back? Because you don't have anything else, Dad said. And because walking away makes you look unstable. You think other companies won't hear about this? Word travels. That made me pause. What do you mean? Word travels. Silence. Then Mom said, your brother knows people in the industry. He's just trying to help. Pause. Help how? More silence. Dad cleared his throat. He's been reaching out to some contacts, putting out feelers, making sure this doesn't hurt your reputation. My stomach dropped. He's talking about me to other companies? He's networking, Mom said defensively. That's what family does. You should be grateful. I hung up, just pressed end, and sat there staring at my phone. Zach was spreading who knows what version of events, probably making me sound like an unstable problem employee who couldn't handle rejection. I called him. He answered on the third ring. Hey, he said, all casual. Mom called you? What are you doing? What do you mean? Don't play dumb. Why are you talking to people about me? He sighed like I was being difficult. I'm trying to help. I know people in logistics. I'm doing damage control. Damage control for what? You walked out of a job with no notice. That looks terrible. I'm trying to spin it before it gets worse. My voice was rising. Zach, I don't need you spinning anything. Stay out of my career. Someone has to be the adult here, he said. And I could hear the condescension dripping from every word. You're being emotional, not thinking clearly. I don't need protection. I need you to mind your own freaking business. It becomes my business when you make the whole family look bad. When Mom and Dad have to explain to their friends why their son quit his job like a teenager, there it was. This wasn't about me. It was about how my decisions reflected on them. Stop talking about me to your contacts, I said. Stop interfering. Just fuck off. Fine, he said, but don't come crying to me when you can't find work because you burned every bridge in the industry. I hung up. Blocked his number. Blocked Mom and Dad too. But it got worse. 2 days later, I got a weird email, an anonymous Gmail address. Subject, you should see this. Inside was a forwarded email chain between Zach and someone at my old company, the VP, the guy who smiled at me after my final interview, the guy who'd ultimately decided to hire Bella instead. The emails went back weeks before I'd quit. Zach was asking about me, how I was doing at work, whether there were any performance concerns. The VP kept it vague at first, but Zach pushed. Said he was worried about me, said I'd been acting strange, asked if the company should know anything, and the VP took the bait, started sharing details about the promotion process, how they'd gone with someone else, how I was being difficult about training Bella. Zach's responses were worse, saying things like, that sounds like him, and he's always struggled with authority, and maybe he needs some tough love to grow up. I felt physically sick. Ran to the bathroom, dry heaved over the toilet. When it passed, I sat on the bathroom floor trying to process what I just read. My family was working against me. I forwarded the email to my personal archive, then did something. I called a lawyer. The lawyer, Greg, was this middle-aged guy who specialized in employment law, had good reviews online. He took one look at the emails and his eyes lit up like Christmas morning. This is bad, he said, for them, not you. Your brother's involvement actually makes this worse, shows coordination. Can I sue the company? Absolutely. Your brother? That's trickier but possible. The company definitely violated retaliation laws here. He took my case on contingency, no upfront costs. We'd go after them for wrongful termination and retaliation. Meanwhile, I was interviewing. Had 3 solid leads. One seemed really promising. Logistics company, good reputation, better pay. The recruiter, Jennifer, reached out directly, said my experience was exactly what they needed. Phone screen went great. She scheduled an in-person interview. I prepped hard for it. The interview was on a Wednesday. 3 people on the panel, including the department head. Went smooth. At the end, the department head smiled and said, "We'll need to check references, but I think you'd be a great fit. Expect to hear from us by end of week." I left feeling good. Friday afternoon, Jennifer called. Her voice was different. Careful. "Hey," she said. "So, we completed your reference checks and I need to talk to you about something." My stomach dropped. "We reached out to your former employer. The feedback was concerning." "Concerning how?" She hesitated. "They said you had performance issues, that you were insubordinate, that you left without notice after being placed on a performance improvement plan. That's not true. They're retaliating because I'm suing them." Pause. "You're suing your former employer?" "Yes, for wrongful termination and retaliation." Long silence. "I'm sorry, but we're going to move forward with other candidates. The pending litigation is too much risk." "Jennifer, they're lying to cover themselves." "I understand, but we have to go with the information we have. I'm sorry." She hung up. I sat there staring at my phone. They'd torpedoed me, actively sabotaged a job opportunity. The next 2 interviews went the same way. Everything positive until reference checks. Then suddenly concerns about my attitude, my professionalism, my reliability. I started to feel like I was being hunted. Every door that opened slammed shut at the last second. Every promising lead turned into another rejection. My savings were dwindling. Rent was due, and I couldn't get anyone to hire me because my former employer was poisoning every well. I called Greg immediately after the 3rd rejection. "That's illegal. Companies can't lie in reference checks. This actually strengthens our case. Forward everything to me." That night, another anonymous email. Subject, more evidence. Another email chain, this time between HR and Zach, dated after I'd already quit. After I'd hired a lawyer, Zach was still coordinating with them. They were discussing strategy, how to handle my legal action, how to document performance issues retroactively, how to make sure other employers knew I was difficult. There was an email from the VP suggesting they should protect the industry by warning other companies. Zach agreed, said he'd spread the word through his network. I forwarded it to Greg, called him even though it was late. "This is conspiracy," he said after reading it. "Defamation, tortious interference, they're done. And Zach, he's actively participating. That's actionable." Monday morning, Greg filed an amended complaint, adding Zach as a defendant. By Tuesday, my old company's lawyers were calling trying to settle. Greg told them no. Wednesday, I got a call from an unknown number. Let it go to voicemail. It was Mom calling from a different phone since I'd blocked her regular number. "You sued your own brother?" she screamed in the voicemail. "If you go through with this, you're out of this family." I didn't reply. She'd made her choice clear. Within a week, 2 other former employees contacted Greg, April and James. Both had similar stories. Both had been pushed out and blacklisted. April had worked at the company for 7 years before questioning a directive from management that seemed legally questionable. She'd gone to HR. 2 months later, she was on a PIP and then terminated. Spent 6 months unemployed despite dozens of interviews because every reference check came back with concerns about her judgment. James had reported workplace safety violations. Got fired 3 weeks later for supposed attendance issues, even though he had perfect records. Nobody would hire him after that. He'd been told by one recruiter off the record that his former employer had flagged him as litigious and high risk. "This is a pattern," Greg said. "Exactly what we needed." They joined as co-plaintiffs. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was systematic retaliation. Discovery started. Greg subpoenaed everything. The company fought it. The judge ordered compliance. My parents started calling extended family, spreading their version. Most relatives took their side. I got texts telling me I was being vindictive. My cousin Michelle reached out. She was the only one who asked questions instead of assuming I was wrong. "Your dad's done this before," she said over coffee. "Sabotaged people, I mean. Remember when I applied for that training program after high school?" "I did, vaguely." "Your dad called the coordinator, told them I wasn't reliable." All lies. But it killed my chances. Why? Because Zach applied too. And your dad didn't want competition. Zach got in. I worked retail for 3 years. I felt sick. I had no idea. Nobody did. I only found out because the coordinator mentioned it to my mom years later. She looked up. Your dad always protects Zach at everyone else's expense. 3 weeks later, discovery documents arrived. Boxes of printed emails, thousands of pages. What they found was damning. A literal list titled, "Do not rehire with codes," next to names. My name was on it. Code litigious, warn others. So were April and James, all marked as problems. But worse, the emails showed coordination. HR had regular contact with HR departments at other major companies. They shared problem employee information, an industry-wide blacklist operation. Greg called me. "This is bigger than I thought. We're going after the whole network. Can we do that?" "We can try. It'll get messy." "I don't care. They destroyed careers." When word got out about the scope, my parents lost it. They tried calling from multiple numbers. When that didn't work, they showed up at my apartment, banged on the door. Dad pushed past me when I opened it. "Stop this right now." "Get out." "Not until you listen. You're ruining Zach's life." Zach ruined his own life by helping my employer blacklist me. "He was protecting the family reputation," Mom said. "Then you raised him wrong," I said. "Now leave." Dad stepped closer. "Drop the lawsuit or you're dead to us." "Already am," I replied. "Get out of my apartment." He stared at me, then turned and left. Mom followed. I locked the door. 6 months into litigation, my old company tried to settle. Decent money, neutral reference agreement, mutual non-disparagement clause. Greg brought me the offer. From a legal standpoint, this is solid, but if your goal is actual change, settlement doesn't accomplish that. I thought about Michelle, about April and James, about probably dozens of others who'd been crushed. What happens if we go to trial? We force testimony under oath, make it public record. Even if we only get partial damages, the exposure alone destroys their operation. But there's risk. They have expensive lawyers. Juries are unpredictable. Reject it. "We're going to trial." Greg smiled. "Was hoping you'd say that." We rejected the offer. They came back higher. We rejected again. More people started coming forward. Former employees from other companies. The Blacklist network was huge. At least a dozen major companies. Greg built a case showing systematic coordination to suppress employee rights. The local media picked it up. Major companies accused of illegal Blacklist network. My old company panicked. So did the others. They started settling individually. Some issued public apologies, others quietly changed policies. But my old company and Zach didn't settle. They dug in. So, we went to trial. Greg presented methodically, showed the emails, the list, called April and James, built an undeniable pattern. Their lawyers tried to discredit everyone, claimed we were disgruntled employees making things up. Then Greg called Zach to testify. Watching this asshole squirm on the stand was satisfying. Greg destroyed him, showed emails where Zach specifically suggested ways to document performance issues, where he offered to spread negative information, where he coordinated with the VP. The best moment was when Greg asked Zach directly why he'd contacted my employer. Zach tried the concerned family member angle. Greg pulled out an email dated 2 days after I applied for the promotion, before I'd even been rejected. Zach was already talking to the VP, already positioning himself as a concerned party. The timeline proved it wasn't about concern, it was premeditated sabotage. Zach had no answers. The jury saw exactly what he was. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Jury deliberated 2 days. Verdict, guilty on all counts, wrongful termination, retaliation, defamation, conspiracy. The judge awarded significant damages, not just to me, but to April and James too, plus punitive damages. But the real victory was what came after. The verdict made local news. My old company never recovered. The publicity destroyed them. Within a year of the verdict, they filed bankruptcy. The VP resigned in disgrace. Steve got fired. Zach lost everything. His company dropped him immediately. Nobody else would hire him. My parents never apologized. Just stopped talking to that side of the family. Michelle told me they were telling people I was mentally unstable. Didn't care. I'd built a new life, found a better job. The settlement money helped, paid off debts, built a safety net. But more than that, I had self-respect. Something my old company and family never gave me. Some people said I should have just moved on. That holding grudges was unhealthy. Those people never had family members actively sabotage their careers. I chose to fight, and I won. Not just for me, but for everyone they tried to bury. 2 years after the verdict, I still get messages from people affected by the industry blacklist thanking me for exposing it, saying their careers recovered. And that makes it worth it. I ran into Todd a few months ago, random encounter at a coffee shop. He was still at a logistics company, just a different one. Dude, he said when he saw me, I heard about everything that went down. That was crazy. He ordered some complicated drink with like 7 modifications, then turned back to me. So, did you ever train Bella? I had to laugh. No, Todd. I never trained Bella. Oh, that's probably why everything fell apart then. He said it with a straight face. Probably, buddy. Makes sense. He nodded sagely, then after a pause, hey, are you still mad at everyone? Some people? Yeah, that's fair. I'd probably be mad too if I understood what happened. He grabbed his drink. Well, good seeing you. You seem less stressed now. Thanks, Todd. Watching him leave, I realized he was right. I was less stressed, despite the lawsuit, despite losing my family, despite everything, because I'd stopped accepting disrespect disguising as loyalty, stopped putting everyone else's comfort ahead of my own dignity. My parents never came around. Last I heard, they were telling people Zach was the real victim, that I destroyed his life out of spite. Let them think that. The court records tell a different story. Found out through Michelle that Zach was working some entry-level job in a different state, completely blackballed from logistics. The irony wasn't lost on me. Steve ended up at a smaller company, lower position. Anna said he'd aged like 10 years in one. Karma's funny like that. And Bella? Heard she'd left the industry entirely, couldn't handle the scrutiny after the trial, exposed how she got promoted in the first place. The funny thing, turns out Steve had been angling to date her. That smile from the VP after my final interview, he was in on it too. The whole promotion was basically Steve's sad attempt at office romance disguised as merit-based advancement. The case files revealed everything. The real reason they picked Bella wasn't leadership experience. It was because Steve had convinced the executives she had potential while simultaneously undermining me behind the scenes. Guy literally sabotaged my career because he was single for someone who wasn't even interested in him. April and James used their settlement money to start their own logistics consulting firm. They asked if I wanted to join as a partner. I declined, needed a break from the industry drama. These days I work at a company where competence actually matters, where loyalty goes both ways. The settlement money is sitting in investments. Emergency fund is solid, life is stable. I'm doing better than fine.